Hey everybody, John here. Obviously. Now there are two basic paths for dealing with people whose opinions you disagree with. And if you deal with people, you're going to deal with people whose opinions you disagree with. So there's two paths. And I might even say there's two philosophies. Although let's talk in practical terms about paths. One of these pathways is you talk to and you listen to them. And you deal with all the stuff that they say that you disagree with. You figure out where you can find common ground, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I'm not going to go through step by step how to manage a disagreement. But that's one of the paths, is you talk to them and you listen to them verbally. Dialogue, that's one of the paths. The other path is violence or force. And, I mean, there's endless variations within each of these two pathways. But these are the two basic pathways. One of these paths leads to getting along with people, cohabitating, leads to peace, leads to cooperation, and one of them leads to war and murder. I'm not going to tell you which one. I mean, it's obvious. And right now we are in the midst of a political convulsion of massive stupidity. That's what I'm going to call the present situation in the world. Trump, during the presidential debate, was asked, hey, have you stopped beating your wife yet? No, sorry, that was not the question. They asked, hey, do you denounce white supremacy? Which is basically the same question as, have you stopped beating your wife yet? It's a shit-heel question. It's a garbage question. And denouncing white supremacy, okay, do you agree that punching Nazis is a good idea? That's the same question. And guess what? It's not. It's a bad idea. It's a stupid idea. In fact, punching not the verbal, let's go punch Nazis and let's denounce white supremacy. Those are basically the same statement. And I have really wondered where the whole, and I know I'm going to talk about punching Nazis here instead of denouncing white supremacy, but they're on a continuum and they're very connected. So I'm going to talk about one first. The left was fascinated and obsessed with this phrase, this idea, for a long time, for a couple of years. And I couldn't figure out where it came from, but I think I have a clue. It's from the culture of action movies. In particular, I mean, more lately, Marvel movies. Like Captain America wears the whole red, white, and blue leather suit, and who does he punch? He punches Nazis, right? Red Skull is a Nazi. He punches, what's that actor's name? I don't know the actor's name who plays Red Skull. Chris Hemsworth? I have to look it up. Hugo Weaving, yeah. And Chris Evans, yeah. Chris Evans is the actor. Well, Hugo Weaving is not an actual Nazi, and Chris Evans is not actually a superhero. He doesn't have super muscles. He's just an actor. And the world that they inhabit is a fantasy world. As is all the other, Die Hard and Bruce Willis and every other Arnold Schwarzenegger. All this is fantasy. Good guys don't punch bad guys, right? That's fantasy world. Good guys do not punch bad guys. The way that we deal with bad guys in the world is through the courts, through negotiation, through dialogue, right? That's how that's how the grown-up adult world works. And so this idea that became popular in popular political dialogue from fantasists, actors, because that's what actors are, they're fantasists, came from the fantasy world of movies. A comic book, you have comic book morality. Now, comic book is the idealized morality, right? Okay, good guy punches bad guy, but that's not a practical way to get along in the real world. It's just not realistic. It's stupid. 20 pages of fucking hand-drawn guys in skin-tight combat gear punching each other as if those punches do nothing, because the artist is gonna draw the guy with a perfect jawline next week too. He's not gonna go to the hospital for 6 months for reconstructive surgery. And then we come to denouncing white supremacists. First of all, there aren't any. Well, unless you count Black Lives Matter, they might be. But denouncing them, in other words, shutting them down, well, that's the path of violence, isn't it? Instead of the path of dialogue. And now my prime minister, the guy who leads my country, has chosen the path of violence, denounce white supremacists. That's okay. You have two paths. One is listen to them and talk to them and work out what the problems are. Maybe they actually have grievances that aren't being resolved, and so they've escalated to this point of, in the case of white supremacy, that, or Nazism, or any of the other, ridiculous and egregious ideologies that we find so objectionable. You don't punch them and you don't denounce them. You fucking talk to them and you listen to them. That's how we deal with things in the adult world. That's how we act like grown-ups. That's how we have peace. Because the alternative path leads to war and murder. And apparently now that's the popular path. That's the thing that's being sold to the public as noble. And, I just got banned from a subreddit, for pointing this out. I'm now apparently a white supremacist because instead of wanting to use the path of violence, I want to use the path of dialogue. We're in real trouble if the people making decisions about how we solve problems and disputes think that this toddler-brained idea, which comes from comic books, good guy punch bad guy, is going to apply in the real world and is the appropriate way to deal with these problems. We're in real trouble. The path is dialogue. That's the solution. That's the problem-solving mechanism of the human race, not the path of punching Nazis, which leads to violence, murder, and death. Thanks for listening, and I hope this really cheered you up. And also thanks to the people helping support the channel on Patreon and Subscribe Star. Links in the low bar. Thanks for listening, and have a lovely, lovely day.